All right, seventh grade today is all about learning how to use our circumference formula to solve problems. So that is our learner's question. How do I use the circumference formula to solve problems? So you will see as we're working through today, sometimes we're trying to find circumference using the formula. Other times we are trying to find other variables. So this is 11.2, and hopefully you gained some good information from our circumference activity on Friday about how diameter and radius are related and how we use them to find circumference. So what I want you to keep in mind is as we're looking at this, circumference as a measurement is the distance around a circle. So just like we took the string and we wrapped it around each of those lids and then we measured that length of string on the ruler, we can use the formula to also find circumference. So we need to review what pi is and the approximations of pi and what our formula looks like. So normally pi is going to be written using this symbol, and on your vocab sheet you should have just filled in some information about pi. So we will talk as a class about what pi actually is, but you should be familiar with this symbol. And most often we are going to use 3.14 as the value for pi, and this is an approximation. So when I use my circumference formula, I can say circumference equals pi times the diameter, or I could say circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. These really say the same thing because remember my diameter is 2 times the radius. So two different ways of writing the same formula. So whenever I'm using it, I always need to start by writing the formula. So let's look at our first example. Which tiles describe a circle with a circumference of 3 pi m or 4 pi m? So as I look at these two examples here, this circle represents a circumference of 3 times pi, and it's measured in meters, so 3 pi meters. And this circle represents a circumference of 4 pi meters. So when we look at these two, obviously this circle is larger because 4 times pi is going to be greater than 3 times pi. But let's look at how to use this in a formula. So if I need to know what is the circumference, I'm going to start by writing my formula. However, I need to use the information that they've given me. In this case, they've given me diameter. So I'm going to use my formula with diameter in it. So I'm going to use C equals pi times D. I always start by writing my formula. My second step is to substitute numbers in that I know. Well, I don't know the circumference. That's what I'm trying to find. But I do know that pi is about 3.14, and I do know that the diameter is 4. So I simply substitute those numbers in my equation. And my last step is to follow the order of operations. So I'm going to multiply 3.14 times 4, which gives me 12.56. I'm measuring in inches, so I get a circumference of 12 and 56/100 inches. Let's look at this measuring wheel problem. So the distance that this wheel travels on a complete turn is the same as the distance around the edge of the wheel. So this distance would be the wheel's circumference, right? How far that wheel can travel in one revolution is the same as the distance around that wheel or its circumference. So if we want to know what is the length of the tire track made by one rotation of the 20-inch wheel, then I'm going to use my circumference formula. I'm going to use 3.14 for pi, and I can use 20 inches. But first I need to know if they say a 20-inch wheel, does that represent the diameter, the distance all the way across the circle, or the radius? half of the distance across the circle. So I know that if they're saying a 20-inch wheel, that refers to the diameter. So I'm going to substitute 3.14 for pi and 20 in for diameter. So now my last step is just to follow the order of operations, which means I'm going to multiply 3.14 times 20. I get 62.8 inches. That would be the length of the tire track made by one rotation of the wheel. This question we will come back to as a class discussion, but let's move ahead to the back page of your notes. So to the nearest tenth of a meter, what is the circumference of a circle with a radius of 3.4 meters? So this time I see that they've given me radius, so I'm going to write down my circumference formula that uses radius, 2 times pi times r. I always start by writing my formula. Now I'm going to substitute in what I know. I know that for pi I'm going to use 3.14, and I know that radius r is 3.4. So my last step is just to multiply it all out. So I have 2 times 3.14 times 3.4, which gives me 21.352. Now I need to know to the nearest tenth, so now I'm going to round. If this is the tenths place, the 5 tells me to round that 3 up to a 4. So this will be 21.4 meters would be the circumference. Let's look at finding the circumference for each of these coins. We've been given different diameters here, so I'm simply going to start substituting these into my formula. I'm always going to start by writing my formula, and then I'm going to substitute in what I know, and then I'm going to multiply and solve. Again, I'm given diameter, so I'm going to start by writing C equals pi d, and I'm going to substitute in what I know. Last step, I'm going to multiply. This one is also millimeters. It's supposed to be green. C equals pi times diameter. I'm going to substitute in what I know, 3.14 for pi, 24.3 for d, or diameter, and now I'm just going to multiply. C equals pi d. I substitute what I know, 3.14 for pi, 23.3 for diameter. Now I multiply. Oh boy. Sorry about that. And last one, start with my formula. I will change my pen color. C equals pi d. I substitute in what I know. I know pi, and I know the diameter. Now I'm just going to multiply 3.14 times 25.8 gives me 81.012 millimeters. Now, if you are asked to use 22.7 for pi instead of 3.14, that's perfectly fine. We will write the formula that we need. I'm trying to find the diameter. I'm going to say pi d, but this time I know the circumference, so I'm going to put that in for C, and I'm going to put 22/7 in here for the diameter. So if I need to solve for D, you will remember from earlier this year in solving equations that the way to get rid of a fraction is to multiply by the reciprocal. So if I turn 22/7 upside down, it becomes 7/22. So those will cancel over here and leave me just with D. On this side, I can do 88 times 7 and then divided by 22, which gives me a diameter of 28. So still starting by writing the formula, I substitute in what I know. This time I know the circumference, so I put that in for C, and I solve for D instead. That's all there is to it. Good luck using your formula. Remember the 3 steps. Write your formula, substitute, then solve.